Right. I liked his book.
I guarantee you, like that, if Eric could have just spoken to Ted, that because that Eric is a no bullshit guy.
Right.
You know, it's just like I always loved that about Eric is you could motherfuck him and he'd motherfuck you back, and you'd go out and you'd do the business and come back, and then that night at the Marriott, he'd sit down next to you. And go, "You want to drink a beer with me, you prick? Fuck yeah, you son of a bitch!"
Yeah.
And you fucking have a beer, and it was like, but that's what he was talking the other day on something. I was watching one of his podcasts, and he goes, "I'm not some analyst. I'm just a Detroit guy," and that just resonated to me because it's the same thing. It's just like there's just something about Detroit guys that we just kind of have a different kind of take on things. But it's just like I'm not saying I'm Goldman Sachs. I'm just saying I'm a Detroit guy. And I was just like, I'm with you, Eric. I know exactly what you're talking about. So,
Eric and Eric's time in AWA. I'm sorry, Eric's time in AWA. His start is a really interesting. He had a very good book, by the way. His first book, I know he's got a book out now, but the first one that I guess WWE published.
The one is
Controversy Creates Cash. Is what it's called. It was an excellent book because his story is very much the entrepreneurial spirit, the clawing your way up. I mean, no one handed him anything. I mean,
no.
he was a promotions guy, hawking some toy product and started advertising.
And he got fucked with because he was handsome.
Oh, because people thought, yeah.
It was, a fucking weatherman, and
Yeah, it did kind of have that weatherman look, right? But anyway, so he really ground floor, buying time on Vern's show. But I guess because of the looks, though, too, and his presentational salesmanship, he gets a shot holding the stick, and it's really an amazing story. That start to executive vice president of WCW, and of course everything he did there, and convincing guys like Vern first, and then later on Ted Turner, to let him in. First to a very protected world, and Vern was very old school that way, and having an outsider.
I only met him one time.
But you did meet him though.
Yeah, I met him one time. I met him at. We ran the Felt Forum at Madison Square
At the Gardens.
Yeah, we ran. I wrestled Van Hammer that night.
And what was Vern doing there?
He was just there because Greg was with the company.
Oh, right. What'd you think of Greg?
He was cool. I mean, he was kind of a dick because we were greenhorns. But he did come down one time. Like a couple of us, he showed up at center stage and got in the ring with us and, showed us some shit. Like he actually put his fucking boots on, and there's not many guys that have any experience. Like I tell the Mike Rotunda story all the time where I was working with Mike and I was fucking cutting him in half every night, dropping elbows on him. And he sat there at center stage for an hour and a half and let me drop fucking elbows on him and slam him and just trying to teach me to work as he was working with me. And he was just like, and every night he would say, we'll do, we'll lock up, we'd grab a head, and I was the heel, but he would call the match. And he says, it's, we did it, we built it, add another hip toss, add this, add that, just real rudimentary. And then it was just like, okay, like when that match was over, we were sitting, in the locker room, and he had walked like to our, because heels and baby faces could be in the same locker room. And he'd walk down and he said to me, he says, just so you know, because nobody had cell phones, just so you know, tomorrow you're calling a match. And I didn't sleep a fucking wink. Because, when you first break in, man, guy says, everything was called.
Yeah.
Headlocks. I headlock you? No, motherfucker, you can't be screaming.
But isn't that the way to learn? Eventually, someone's just got to hand it to you and let's see what you do.
I tell you, I remember when they were going to cut. They were cutting some guys, and I heard from Eric that they were going to cut Mike. And I said, man, I'll pay his salary out of my fucking money. I said, don't cut Mike. And I told Mike that story. I told Eric the story how Mike took care of me, and fucking Eric said, we ain't cutting him.
So he didn't.
No.
Oh wow.
No.
Does Mike know that?
No.
He does now.
I've always had the utmost respect for him because on top of that, he was a shooter, man.
Mm-hmm.
If Robbie Steiner says a guy can go, he can go.
Mm.
Right. I like that whole varsity club thing they did.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a good.
Yeah, no, that was cool.